All right, guys, welcome to the We3Kingz Podcast. This is your host Mike with my two co-hosts Anthony and Steven.
Giving out all our governments, man. Golly.
And I changed my name.
Yep, I gotta put everybody on the spot. That's how we go ahead and do it. All right, I'm rolling on over to Ann for our topic today.
Okay, so this podcast, gonna be a little different. We're gonna have to put on our thinking caps, man. We gotta go further beyond into the depths of your mind. All right, we're talking about philosophy. And the topic today at hand is what I want to talk about was transhumanism. Now, if you don't know what transhumanism is, basically that's uh, promoting the research and development of human enhancement. So, for example, like a arm, like a robotic arm to pick up things, or shoot, maybe even like pacemakers or like things of that nature, could probably be considered transhumanism. But I wanted to get deeper into that. You know, what if you replaced every part of you with these cyber enhancements? Would you still be human?
That is an interesting question.
I guess I'll give my opinion to it first. You're walking a fine line of being human and being mutated at that point. Because I know most of us has seen one of the Terminators, or the I'll be back him. Even if you haven't seen the originals, there's the newest ones. At some point, to actually answer that question, we have to first find a fundamental aspect of what it means to be human. Well, for me, to be human is not necessarily physical attributes, because there's one thing to be a Homo sapien, right? There's another thing to be human, because all humans, Homo sapiens, are humans, but not all humans are Homo sapiens, but not all Homo sapiens are humans. And let me explain. To be human is to show compassion. Is to generally be able to separate morals from animalistic instincts. And the reason why I say not all Homo sapiens are humans is because we do have unique individuals that just can't disassociate from their animalistic instincts, like to hunt and to kill each other, because an animal generally kills and hunts for food. They don't generally do it out of pleasure or for fun. But humans can, more or less. That's where I feel like to be human is to have some sort of compassion, some sort of servitude, some type of empathy, sympathy, stuff like that. And to go back to your original question about the transformations, essentially, theoretically, I would say yes, you are still a human, but I would call you a mutant, like you're mutated, essentially. It's not an insult, it's just, you've pretty much changed your physical attributes from what a natural human would be considered to what you feel is a more physically enhanced being. And mutations can be good for you, or it can be bad depending on like your environment. So to me, to answer your question, theoretically, yes, you're still human even with the biomechanical enhancements.
Well, I do want to ask you, as far as you saying about talking about animalistic instincts or compassion. Uh, I feel like some animals out here, like, dolphins or elephants or whatever are smart enough to show compassion within their own, communities. So, like, what would they be considered?
I think those are it. I think that's. I do think that might be one of the similarities that we share with certain animals. Because when we say animals show compassion, we generally talk about the more kind animals. I won't say kind, like the more common house animals like dogs, cats, rabbits, horses, stuff like that. But then we completely disregard other animals that are they live to survive, like big cats, like lions and tigers and wolves and sharks and other stuff that kill to eat, essentially, or kill to protect their home. Do I think to be human is to completely disassociate from your animalistic instinct makes you human? No, but also because there are animals that do show signs of compassion, which I do think is less common in like the totality of like the animal kingdom, but not everything's heartless. Essentially, if they answered your question.
I do want to give a quick shout out to 13 Sentinels. That was the game that gave me the idea. But Michael, what is your take on that as far as transhumanism goes?
I mean, for me, it's very I I want to say because it's like because I was getting ready to buy this game Cyberpunk 2077. So like when I heard you say transhumanism, I immediately went to that like in my mind. Like after seeing the previews of the game. So like my thought process about it was like, I mean, looking at the modifications they receive, even though yes it's a video game and they write it in the story, but I feel like those people still are human. Like the way their actions, their like Steve was talking about empathy, the choices they make or the choices you can make as the character of that story kind of falls in that into what you're saying. So to answer your question, I would say yes, you are still human even if you replace the meat with metal. That's how I feel about it.
I have a question though. So whereas we're talking about it, we keep bringing up like the positives of being a human and such. So I have a question. I know we've all seen some type of zombie movie, whether it's we've seen some type of zombie movie. Do you still consider or people who have been affected by something, whether they turn into like whatever, are those people still human, zombies, or if you I don't know a vampire or whatever? At what point do you stop becoming a human while originally as such?
Mm, that's a tough question for me to answer. That's a very tough one. I gotta. Oh man.
Yeah, because like the first instincts you want to go with zombies, you think like, oh, since they're lost their cognitive ability, they're not human anymore. But that would only be true if it's like something uh controlling them. Like they're like have y'all ever seen the this fungus that takes over insects?
I've heard about it. Yes, I've heard about it. Not so much, but I've heard about it. I was like, ooh, somebody somebody learn how to use that. It's gonna be a problem.
But yeah, yeah, basically there's a fungus that can take over, I guess, the motor skills of an insect and pretty much just eat them from the inside out until they don't need them anymore. At that point, if that's the case, if it would affect a zombie, if that's the reasoning, then yeah, they wouldn't be human anymore. But otherwise, it is kind of hard to say.
I mean, but I think it also speaks to I would say the brutality of the world, the universe at large. Like brutality is a very big thing. And watching something happen, like watching animals hunt and rip the prey apart into pieces and stuff.
Shoot, I feel like it's because they don't have opposable thumbs like we do.
that's one way to put it. My bad about that. Someone interrupted the podcast. My bad. But yeah. So like seeing animals hunt, like the brutality. A lot of people don't realize. I would say they don't recognize human brutality as much. I would say past the zombies, more going towards like us. Like people don't realize how brutal people can be.
I think we do because if you just watch any, like, we'll probably talk about it in the next podcast because it's on topic. But the culture of the world talks about how bad humans are. I just think that we, like, on a global scale, I don't think humans are bad. Like, for like the majority of people aren't, but I think our brutality is a little different in terms of animalistic because yeah, there's like serial killers that are like animalistic in that sense, but we can be brutal to each other and in terms of like bullying or keeping one group beneath the other, racism. There's a lot of different factors that go into it versus an animal's instinct to hunt, which is just, it has to be gruesome because they can't, kill them and take their body parts and like like separate them and clean them up. Nah, they eat what they can get, which goes back to what F was saying with not having opposable thumbs.
Yeah, it just probably like looks more brutal than it actually is.
And that's what I think. I think that's another thing that separates us as humans is that a lot of people will see something natural happen. I don't know if you've been on social media enough to see it, but they'll see something natural happen. Like, okay, let's say like, people have pet snakes. Some people feed them live snakes. I'm not live snakes. They feed them live mice versus frozen mice because some stages won't eat frozen mice. So they're feeding them mouse. You'll go in the comments, and some people will be like, "Oh, that's horrible. That's this, that, and the third. That's like that's abusive or something along those lines." That's just our human instinct to be compassionate, to see something like that and think it's wrong. In actuality, that's natural. It would be the same thing that happened out in the wild. It's just within the confines of a tank or whatever it is.
I think that comes with the sensitivity and I believe the word is desensitizing.
I do think we're desensitized to things that we definitely shouldn't be, but this people say sensitivity like it's an issue, but to be overly sensitive is yeah, but to be overly anything is bad. But as humans, we're a bit more compassionate in terms of like living within each other because that's how we operate. So when we see something so gruesome, we generally have an upset feeling about it. When it's like an animal hunting another animal. That's why people make. I personally don't do it, but that's why when people tell vegans that animals will eat each other and do this and the third to like make fun of them because they don't want to eat animals, I'm like, yeah, but you have to remember they have the compassion to not hunt because we have the mental intelligence to be able to find other ways to eat besides just hunting and killing killing animals. So they transfer into other aspects of life, but then we'll become desensitized to stuff like school shootings or we can go even back further, racism. People become desensitized to them because it becomes commonplace until there's a small group of people that say no, this is not okay, which is where the whole, oh, you're overly sensitive, this, that, and the third comes in. There has to be a group of people to tell you, no, you're wrong, even though it's commonplace.
Yeah, to go back to the hunting aspect of it though. Yeah, I do feel like people are a little bit more compassionate because they didn't grow up doing that stuff, you know.
And another human thing to do is to put something out of its misery. I don't believe animals have the capacity to do something like that. Like, say you were to hit animals to get hurt, and it's just so much pain, but the death is going to be slow because of the injury. A humane thing to do would be to put something out of its misery, so it will stop feeling said pain and can just die peacefully. So I think to be human is more than just, oh, I have a natural built body, or I don't do this. To be human is a lot more complex than it seems, because I do believe that if you aren't, I won't say naturally human, you can become humane. Like, I watched this show called Supernatural, and there's this character who's an angel who's like he's very stubborn in like the beginning and kind of towards the middle, because he's from heaven essentially, but he starts to exhibit humane tendencies like compassion and sacrifice and questioning authority and stuff like that. You know, very human, like emotions and such.
So like speaking of the emotions and stuff, what about the brain? Like as far as like learning that stuff. Like for example, let's say your brain, like everything from your brain, your thoughts, you know, your fears, all that stuff that's stored up there gets like uploaded to like a server. And you know, maybe one day this cybernetic brain, they upload all your thoughts and stuff into this from the server into this new brain with this like new metal body, or you know, whatever the case is. Does that make you human? You know your thoughts and your dreams and hopes and all that.
I feel like I've seen something just like it. Oh yeah, it was on Black Mirror. I think the episode was essentially when you die, you would have your consciousness re-uploaded to like some server. Ironically, you be uploaded and you become like Alexa or something like that, like a Siri or Google Home. You'll upload into that, like you upload.
It kind of reminds me of Ghost in the Shell. That question, like now that I'm thinking about it very like deeply, Ghost in the Shell kind of had me thinking about some wild stuff like that back in the day.
Shoot, I ain't watched that yet, but I mean you can talk about it.
I mean, like a lot of most of the episodes involve them plugging into it almost like a Matrix type system. But yeah, I mean, I didn't get to see much of it because it came on pretty late on Adult Swim. But like I kind of had the little tiny gist of it, like very futuristic with being able to hook into machines. A lot of people had plugins on the back of their necks at that point, kind of like Cyberpunk 77.
To answer your question, that's kind of a difficult question to answer because there's not enough to say that you're not human, essentially. Because if what makes you human is your consciousness, and you can just transfer your consciousness, does that mean you can just transfer your humanity? But can you transfer it to someone? Also, it's another question.
I'm not sure if you can like brain swap or whatever the fuck. I don't I don't know if that's possible outside the realm of science fiction.
So then that begs the question. Okay, you can't upload it to another entity. Okay, cool, whatever. But do you think, like, with the whole thing with the show I was talking about with the angel becoming like learning human traits, do you think with the advancement of technology and with robots kind of becoming more and more like realistic looking and exhibiting like communication skills, do you think robots could become humans?
If we're if we want them to learn, if you want them to learn these emotions, it's possible.
All right. I mean, I have something to say on that. I I don't want to sound like I'm way out there, but like I mean, there are works of fiction that cover this, kind of giving sort of humane traits to robots, and we like I ain't gonna lie. I guess maybe that contributed to like this fear mongering thought kind of coming through my mind, but I don't want to deal with that. Honestly, I know that sounds kind of like weird to say, but like I mean, we seen Terminator, we saw what happened with Skynet, and I mean, especially if they start to emulate the brutality of humanity, then what are we gonna do about that if that happens? It's a fine line right there. Yeah, it's a fine line. Like that's a line right there. We gotta recognize the line and figure out where we want to stand. Like where we want this line to stop it. Cause if giving them everything that humanity trying to program everything that humanity is into them may cause an issue. And then it's as far as transferring consciousness, and would that stop death? Would be another question for that one. We'll probably answer that either later on. And if it does, I feel like we may lose maybe one of the most valuable things about being a human going through the life and death cycle.
That it, yeah. Uh, I feel like it probably would if your consciousness keeps you alive. But yeah, you definitely would lose that feeling of death unless your consciousness gets deleted.
That I can't. I don't remember if it was off Black Mirror, but there's a show that's exactly like this conversation. Once I like remember, like I could probably type it in, but but I do have a question. Since we were talking about some along the lines of showing them how to be human, can you teach someone how to be human, and if so, how do you do that?
It depends on what it is. Like we can teach ourselves, basic skills and things of that nature.
I don't really consider that being like necessarily human because skills is subjective. You know, a cat is considered the greatest hunter. That's a skill that you can't teach a human to be.
No, but I mean like skills, as far as like things that would make us human, like building a shelter or
I mean, I think it would also go teaching someone to be human would be also teaching someone. It also depends on the limitations. If you're teaching another human, Steve, then obviously you can let them know aware of the limitations. But like if you were teaching an entity that's omnipotent or like you know not human basically, like even a robot would kind of, but they wouldn't have the limitations that a human would have. Like you would tell, like if someone was going hunting with you, you would tell them, okay, we need to be careful. We can't. Some of the animals most animals on Earth are faster than us on land. So if we get into a confrontation with certain animals like lions, tigers, bears, having the human, having the limitation that we know we are human and that they can they can run faster than us, we need to make smarter decisions. And if that person does not adjust to those decisions, they may end up being the dinner on the table.
But how? But if they're omnipotent or non-human, they already don't have those limitations.
yeah, they can far exceed the limitations, but I'm saying as far as teaching another person what it is to be human, I believe you'd be able to manage those expectations better than you would be trying to teach either someone that's omnipotent or teaching like a robot or something else that's has different limitations placed on them than we would have.
I don't know if you're talking about teaching them things emotionally.
Yeah, like you're talking about the physical limitations we have as human beings. Everything has a physical limitation. That's why I really don't think too much about it. I'm talking about like the emotional, the mental, like the essence of what you believe to be a human is. How do you and can you teach someone to be that?
Honestly, I don't think you can teach emotion. It's just something that has just been molded from for like millions of years into us. It's not something you can really teach.
I would disagree with that, and this is why. This is why I would disagree. It's because sociopaths or psychopaths can't really remember. Teach themselves how to exhibit emotions that they don't truly feel. So they know how they should feel in a situation based on certain things. You know. So I do believe that you can't force someone to feel how they feel about something. Like something that might make you upset might not make me upset. But with that being said, I do believe let's say, okay, look, I keep bringing up the angel, but yeah, that's just because of the conversation. But one of the reasons he wasn't necessarily taught how to be a human, he got to witness them. He got to see them be in pain. He got to see them be happy. Because they was talking, and he was like, because he was talking to one of the main characters, and he was explaining how much it sucks to be a human, like. And that was the best part about being a human, because our strength is our weakness. Our emotion, our compassion can be our downfall at times. Like, you ever try to help someone who took advantage of your kindness? But imagine if people would just stop being kind. That's why I think it can be a strength, but it also can be our weakness or our downfall. Like, that's why. Let's be honest. That's. I was listening to a video that was like, imagine the Avatar and the Naruto universe, and one of the things that would have stood out to me as I'm like before actually listening to it is that Aang would have struggled with surviving in a world where killing is considered commonplace, because even though Naruto did his best not to kill people, he did what he had to do, and what he considered like necessary.
Didn't Aang kill somebody, or at least got close to it?
I'm trying to think. If he did, it was definitely not intentional.
Yeah, because I feel like if he didn't, it probably been explained away because it was kids show on Nickelodeon. But if it wasn't a kid show, I'm pretty sure Aang probably would have had a official death on his hands.
We could probably say this for like an anime cartoon podcast, but Aang's big thing is that he couldn't kill because of what he was. If Aang would have been born as like a firebender or earth, or if he wasn't an air nomad, he probably would have had absolutely no issue killing. Because air nomads are essentially monks, and monks will try to live in peace. Anyway, but that's why, like, but then also one of the dangerous issues with being a human is thinking your ideology is correct. Because who are you to say that this person doesn't deserve life? Oh, well, he killed X amount of people. Okay, but who are you to say he deserves to die because of it? Who are you to say that he deserves to die, or or my ideology is wrong simply because you disagree with it. So I do think there's a lot of flaws that come with being human for sure, but our our imperfection is to me our what make is the best thing about being a human, because if you were perfect and without flaw, then everyone would essentially be the same. There'd be quote unquote no issues in the world, but even in the show that I was watching, the angels had an issue because even though it's heaven, someone has to rule, and everyone's idea of a good place is completely different. Everyone's euphoria is going to be slightly different.
Yeah, the utopia angle is interesting. Do you feel like we get that thought process just because of our flaws allow us that? Like, let's say if everyone really was on the same page and we had no concept of, I guess, the sadness outside of, like, death or whatever. Outside of natural occurrence, I guess I should say. Would it be, like, seen differently?
I think everyone stood on the same ideologies, the world would never grow. It would never backtrack, but it would never grow either.
Yeah, I want to add to that too, Steve, with the growth. Would I feel like a lot of ideologies. Okay, the way I wanted to say this would be like, you remember when at one point religion was very forward in their messaging of what to do and what not to do. Now, would that fall under what you were saying right then? As in, we all know what the rules are, and we know we all need to follow them exactly to a T. But if we were all really on the same page, like I'll bring it back to what part of what F said. How would that even be possible? Like that would have to override decisions within like your mind that a lot of people make. Everyone makes different decisions. It's very rare for everyone to be on the same page. Is what I'm basically saying.
I think it's so rare that it's impossible.
Yeah, like it's just like for everyone to be on the same page. There's probably maybe a handful of questions. I don't even know what questions to ask that everyone would be on the same page on. I probably need to compile a list. I'm probably gonna put one together.
The only time I think you can ever truly be on the same page is if you're doing something, like you're on a mission or you're playing a sport, and everyone has to be on the same page so everyone can be in their spots to do what they need to do to make the event a success. But even then, sometimes people just, you know what, f that, he don't need the shot, I want it, or whatever the situation is. I don't think I don't think it's see one of the reasons why we can never be on the same page is because even the Earth itself isn't on the same page. To live in Virginia is not the same as to live in New York. To live in New York is not the same to live in Florida. To live in America is not the same to live in Canada or Asia or whatever. Isn't I'm not talking about like the culture like aspect. I'm talking about like the geographical dynamics of things. If everyone's on the same page, how can someone who lives near the equator relate to someone who lives near the polar ice caps? What you need is going to be different from. Oh no, no! I was using the Earth as an example of why even the Earth isn't completely compatible throughout its entirety.
Yeah, it's not all sitting like if it's 90 degrees in Virginia, it's not going to be 90 in North Dakota. Like it's just different areas, different how you want to say it, kind of what you said, Steve. Different geographical just things, just different across the way.
Which essentially just means oh, I live in an area where it may be cold, so it impacts me differently. So my ideologies might surround that or whatever. Oh, I live around an area where people worship Allah. It's saying this guy. Oh, we worship Buddha, or we don't worship anything, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's just breaking back down to what we have normally. Like is that the argument both y'all have? Is that it's just eventually will go that route anyways?
I truly believe if you took a group of humans, let's say a million, let's just make it a billion, whatever you want. You took a million humans, put them on an island with all the same exact like resources, and you gave them. All, I don't want to make them kids because then they wouldn't survive. But let's just say for the sake of argument, they could. They
I mean, you could probably say like I guess teenagers or preteens because they still gotta learn a lot.
No, the reason why they have to be like children or like babies is because they haven't developed their own personal ideologies just yet. Preteens, young kid, they've already done that. But for the sake of argument, let's just say that they could survive the first 10 years of life or the first 5 years of life or by themselves. So you put a whole bunch of infants together, they somehow grow and raise, then everybody come out at the age of like let's say 15. Cool. Everybody at 15 years old, they just come out this little pod or whatever, and they start to develop their own thing. Everyone will at some point come to their own conclusion about how to do anything. Even if they were given the same exact living situations, let's say they're all given the Bible. At some point, somebody in that million is going to be like, you know what? I don't necessarily agree with this. And then someone like, you know what? He might be right. And then it's going to trickle and then it's going to create some type of division. So I think it's just, even though as humans we flock as groups, we flock in groups separately. Like even in high school, there was cliques. We all went to the same school, but we didn't all hang out with each other.
I feel like high school wasn't super separated, but there was still some.
And because it couldn't be truly because but it might not be separated in the fact where it's like seen on like TV where you got jocks and nerds and stuff like that. But you have a group of people who generally hang out with each other. The athletes generally hang out with other athletes. Band members tend to hang out with other band members or the drama club or whatever. You tend to hang out with people who are like minded or have common interests. And generally within those common interests might be some common ideologies. Like if you're in band, you might, I don't know, think, well, whatever band members think, I don't know.
I mean, it's also something to think too, Steve. Think about majority rule, right? Like, and I want to say majority rule in the sense, let's say group of let's cut it down to a group, maybe a group of 50 people on an island, right? Let's say I want to say 10 people in the 50 decide that they want something different. They want to either like maybe go to a different uncharted part of the island or decide they want to do something different. But let's say everyone agrees at the start to a majority rule decision. This small group decides, well, uh, forget about that. We decide that we want to make our own group. We're leaving. The majority rule is kind of a very big. I feel like a very big topic that people aren't talking about enough. And I'm wondering if we turn into a majority rule, is that a positive, massive positive gain, or is that a massive negative gain, or is it?
In reality, we are a majority rule. And let me explain to you why I say that. Whenever we talk about things, whether it's talk about life or more, we could talk about politics or something more intense like abortion rights or all this other stuff, right? A lot of people bring up morality in their arguments. Morality is nothing but what the general population believes to be true. It's wrong to touch little kids. Morality, as a group, we say, yeah, don't do that. There's nothing that says that is wrong except we just, as a nation or as a group of people, just like, you know what, that's wrong. Don't do that. So majority says no. That's why we have laws, because majority of people say is you shouldn't kill other people, shouldn't steal from other people, you shouldn't do tax fraud, you shouldn't whatever, shouldn't drink and drive. Majority rule is the reason why we have laws in the first place. It's the reason why quote unquote cancel culture exists. Is the reason why people can lose opportunities simply because a group of people say, you know what, this is not right, or this is right. Even in America, you get judged by a group of your peers, like the jury. You're literally the majority of, actually the entire, they all have to, but majority of them have to, they decide your fate, and a majority of them have to pick guilty or not guilty.
To be at the mercy of the group, no, it's a rough situation.
I mean, some laws get a minority ruling.
Yeah, but don't forget, what I said about our strongest assets is also our weakest. Having a group of people behind you is one of the best things to have. But at the same time, those same people standing behind you and stand against you.
I wanted to add some more to it. I'm thinking in my head like certain decisions and laws are made for certain reasons, obviously. But Steve, what you brought up also, like when you let that cross your mind with majority rule decisions, how would you handle a majority rule moving with malicious intent upon groups or separated tribes?
The issue with that, the, the issue with trying to battle a mob, essentially, is what you're asking. Is what you're talking about. Is a mob. Is your ability to defend yourself against it. That's really what it comes down to. I'm not talking like physically necessarily, because I go around killing motherfuckers. But essentially, you have to figure out if you can survive the mob, because that's pretty much what a malicious intent group is. It's the mob, because you can't you can't physically take down a bunch of people. You just have to learn to survive it, and sometimes surviving it might just be keep your head low and stay out of the spotlight. When an entire group turn on you, generally what people do, they find a new group, because people generally, as a species, we're better off as a group. Some people can isolate themselves, but that's why in prison you can only be in solitary confinement for so long, because it's seen as inhumane to keep someone locked up to themselves for too long. But essentially, they just find a new group because they have no choice unless they want to isolate themselves.
All right. So now that leads me to another question, Steve, and Amp. I want both of y'all on this one. When it comes to developing a skill and profiting from said skill, and also developing said skill for your community, how much should the community have say in said skill? I know I'm wording this kind of weird, right? So like I'm gonna try to straighten it out as I'm going through with the question. I'm thinking certain skills can become very useful. Now, this is even if your group or society has a currency value. but certain skills are very useful. Some skills are more useful than others. How do you determine the value of said skills relative to how those skills affect different things around the community?
It just depends on the severity of it, as far as what you need. Like, for example, like in a society, you're gonna need someone to pick up the trash. You're gonna need someone to fix the systems, the sewage, and whatnot, like plumbing, and you're gonna need people to build houses and, I guess, commercial buildings to live and work in. So, from a needs standpoint, what we need to survive, I feel like those should be ranked higher. But I mean, we know that's not really the case in society. A lot of the more glamorous things are usually looked at as high value skills, quote unquote.
Well, for me personally, to necessarily value skills is subjective, but if I had to base it, I would base it on its ability to progress the society forward. Entertainment, no matter how you cut it, will always be one of the higher skills because you're not doing it amongst a couple people at a time or within like you're doing it in front of thousands, if not millions of people. Just based on no matter who you are, you need to laugh, smile, cry. You need to feel something outside of. You need some type of enjoyment. But to rate skills to me is based on its ability to advance the government, not the government, to advance society. And then within those skills or within those companies, essentially, how much of what you're doing, is actually progressing the what is it what the fuck the thing at hand, essentially. Like, okay, let's use warehouses for example. It's not a shit on nobody. Let's use warehouses for example. Warehouses are needed for production to ship stuff out, essentially, because when you order something, you need stuff to be shipped and taken. Okay, cool. Now, within those warehouse components of the warehouse, what do you do within that scope is considered necessary for that operation to continue. Whether you're loading boxes or loading material, unloading material, whether you're sorting material, whether you're uh, the HR of that company, that's a very important job. Whether you're the owner of the company, whether you're truck drivers for that company, because without them, there's no packages being delivered in the first place. So it's a multi-layered step to actually be able to accurately accurately determine what is profitable, like what is a fair exchange of work for service. And then there's time in, because the longer you do it, the more skills you got. Like the better you are. So if you've been working in a factory for a year, you might not be as quick or tips to get okay, well, let's load these boxes a little faster because you've been there for 5-10 years, so little tricks to actually move production along. That's just how I see it. That's just the easiest way. Like, cause I'm a welder essentially. Ray gets paid more because he's been doing it longer, so he's more skilled, so he can produce welds faster. But my skill is also needed within the community, like within the culture, or like within society, because you got to put some shit together. Whether it's cars, ships, houses, not houses, like what the hell are they called? Infrastructures. There's stuff needs to be put together. So I don't think it's mute because there are things I do believe there is a fun. Okay, so we're pretty much talking about essential and non-essential work. That's what we're talking about. I don't think it's a mute point to rank things. I think you have to rank them within the value of what they are amongst its competitors. That's not the word I'm looking for, but like if I work in trades, you can't compare me, like me as a welder, I can't be compared to an engineer. An engineer definitely job is more essential because if they don't. Okay, so I will what the blueprint says, or I put together what the blueprint says. I go off the blueprint, so I still have to. That's important, but it's up for the engineer to actually come up with a good blueprint because they have to take in consideration the terrain, the materials used, the size of the screws or nuts or whatever that needs to be used for everything to be safe. So his job is a little bit more intense, and I'm just following what I'm reading. I have to put it together, like I have to build whatever, but I have to still figure out, you know. So I don't think it's a moot point to value, but you still have to compare it within its competitors. As a welder, my competitor might be a fitter, or it might be an electrician, or someone who works with their hands versus someone who designs versus someone who drives or is a culinary arts. Or there's a lot of things that are on par with each other but are different. They're within different categories, so you can't really compare. I think you have to value them from their what is it called? The industry that they're in. Like a culinary arts, like a chef might make more than a cook, like at a Hardee's or whatever.
Yeah. So like rank them within the industry.
Yeah, you can't rank them amongst the entirety. Like a good thing, and I think actually a good thing that we should compare are public servants, doctors being paid a certain amount versus cops being paid a certain amount versus firefighters and nurses and teachers. You can't, like, doctors, cool. You can say they should make, okay, let's say the top amount that a service worker can make, like a public servant can make, is $150, right? Let's just say that's the max. No, okay, let's say 200,000 a year is the most that they can make, just as a public servant. I'm just using a number to make it easier. I believe that, say 250, 200, since they gotta go through all that shit at school. All right, now let's knock down. Let's say nurses, they should be able to make, let's say 175, 170, something like that. Now we get to the point where we're talking about teachers and firefighters and stuff like that. They should be able to break a 6-figure income, because though they're not in, some teachers are actually in school for like 10 years, but though they're not in school or got the same amount of training, quote unquote, that doctors have, they're still just important, if not, I don't say more, but they're just as integral to the society that we need, because you need someone to protect your teacher. You need someone to teach your kids. You need someone to protect your kids. You need someone to save your kids. You need someone, there's a lot of things. You need proper people who are paid properly come to work and do their job better, essentially. And that's just the fact of the matter. If I'm paid properly, I'm more enjoyable to come to work, because I can come to work, focus on my work, do my job, and not have to worry about stressors of other stuff in life. Like, damn, I gotta come to work, deal with these baby kids, but after the paycheck, I still gotta figure out how I'm gonna eat tonight, because I don't got enough money to pay my rent or whatever I gotta pay. That might be the one thing where we need to, like, all right, they're within the same industry, but they're in different brackets of it, but they still need to be lumped together, and that's a conversation that needs to be had amongst that. But there's not a lot of outside industries that I think you can compare in terms of it should be ranked amongst its industry. And then the lowest man, any part of the industry, the lowest man should be able to afford home, food, and clothing.
Yeah, that gets into a whole nother topic outside of philosophy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it was definitely something because it had been going through my head recently, and sometimes you can Google search or you can search it up on all these other internet sites, but because like how we often when we talk about sports video games, we always talk about a skill gap. I related to that in a way, like in my head when I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, there's a skill gap. There's a difference between someone who has forklift license and someone who doesn't. The one who has forklift license has an extra value at at the moment, but that person who, even though they don't have forklift, maybe the person that doesn't have forklift is college educated. Like it's different. It's different, like gaps, education, like skills.
But well, let's use your thing. I kind of like spaced a little bit, but I heard the whole forklift in college educated. Let's use your thing for example. Okay, say you're at the warehouse, right, and you're loading boxes or whatever, and you have a college degree. Your coworker has a college degree, and you have a forklift certification. What is your college degree towards? Because if it's not towards anything that's beneficial to uh the to the company, you have your college degree does nothing for me. But you have your Fort Life certifications. Now you have an extra skill that is used to speed up production.
Hmm. Like, cause like I was thinking like, okay, if you're a supervisor and you're running a company, and it's a lot of different decisions you can make, but like let's say HR decides to start giving you more choices on the workers you want to bring in, and like you're gonna have to look through these people's applications and stuff about like what they have, like their education, what like their age, how the physical fitness, are they physically fit and able to do the job, like various things you got to take into account, and then once you get to the experience part of the list, like, and I think this is also another thing that probably maybe hurts the college kids a bit when they come out, is like the experience part of the list. You could have the college experience needed for the job, but then you'll be looking at the application, because and they'll be like, oh, you need 5 years of experience, or we recommend 5 years of experience for this job. And it's been college friends of mine who talked about it, that they did not like that a lot.
That's why I do believe that before you pick a job or before you pick a career, whether it's in trades or if it's college, make sure you research your. You have to do your due diligence to research what you're trying to get into, because sometimes the job market just isn't calling for what you're asking for, and that's how you might end up needing a job with 4 or 5 years experience. So okay, I need this experience to get this kind of job, but I'm just coming out of high school. I'm just going to be coming out of college. Okay, I'm getting okay. Say this is your junior year. All right, you go into your senior year knowing you need to get X amount of hours of whatever, or you need to get so many years of experience. How can I get some of that experience prior to getting there? Because you can do work studies, you can do uh, job corps, or there's a whole bunch of ways to get different depending on what it is you're trying to do. Try to find apprenticeships or whatever. That's why it's up to you to do your research on what you're picking, so that you're not 24 with a bachelor's degree, but now all of a sudden you ain't got no jobs lined up, or you ain't got no job opportunities because you don't have the experience.
I feel like that can be. It doesn't really matter sometimes because a lot of people work in industries they didn't even have college degrees for. I feel like when it comes to the interviews, it has to be. I mean, I think I saw like someone said like they were actually an interviewer, and they basically said you had to be like memorable in some way to get the job. Because everything's not so black and white where you go to college, you get the required amount of stuff you do. You might even get the experience and you get the job. That's not always what happens in real life. Sometimes it's who you know, or rather than what you know.
That's why college is a good experience to get that networking down, that networking that you need for life. Like at the end of the day, that's the way that you maximize your potential. I'm like, you gotta know people essentially. Cause
I mean, but do you need to spend thousands of dollars to network?
no. I'm not saying you have to. It's just why your college is a good place to get it, or job, or there's ways to network, but the easiest way to do it is to go to college. I'm not saying you gotta go. I'm just it's one of the benefits of when people do go to college. And if you don't go to college, get jobs or go to events that you like. If you like Comic Con, go to Comic Con. If you like baseball games or sports games, go to sports. So you're meeting people in these environments because people create doors that you might not even know was there.
It's I think, and you know, also like experience is a big heavy factor too, Steve. On my talking to people, you will come into certain situations. There's times where I've talked to older folks who have been skipped over for job promotions for newer young people coming in.
And I can tell you one of the reasons why that happens is okay. There's a lot of reasons why that happens, but the main two reasons that it happens is because you're getting a promotion, right? But you're also closing in on your time to retire. So how I can maximize using this younger? I'm not saying it's right. That's why they have laws against it. But I can maximize this person because his time in the company is going to be much longer. And then with that being said, say I get all my so say I spend 10 years working with this company, right? My experience here could mess me up going somewhere else because I've been taught some way for so long. That's how I do it. That that's why they like getting younger people because you're fresh, you have no experience, or you have some experience but not enough that it'd be hard to break your habits. Because one of the hardest things to do, what people need to realize, is that you have to unlearn habits and then relearn them. Those are two steps versus just being taught the way I want you taught.
Yeah, and what is how much training do you have to go through to break said habits and replace them? Like that's a whole nother beast.
You might have to do twice as much because you have to. It's harder to because when you have habits, you have to consciously think about not doing it to be able to break it. But when something's second nature, something's second nature. That's
This is the We3Kingz Podcast signing off. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video here today. We'll see you next time.